video, I am going to be talking about how you can be an engaging podcast host, how to ask the right questions, and how to use what I call the onion theory to have the best, most engaging podcast and get the most out of your guest on each and every episode. The questions. A lot of times I see people, they're like questions, they spend all this time preparing and they don't ask all of those questions. And if they do, it sounds very robotic because they're just going through their checklist of questions to ask. And that is not engaging. If someone is just holding a list of questions, asking you, you're responding, and then they're going to the next question, and we're not diving deeper into each response, that is not going to be an engaging podcast. So we want to think of the first question should be really interesting, that the audience would want to know about the guest that maybe people are too afraid to ask. Go there. What is this controversial topic or thing about this particular guest? Or, I mean, people would want to know about them, and that content is not already out there. Or they might want to know about a particular topic. Maybe it's something that's currently relevant in the news that would make sense to ask this particular guest. You just want to think of what is one real juicy question that I can ask from the beginning. I want to know this about this person's story because I know that my audience is going to want to know that. So instead of coming up with a list of questions, think of one question that you want the answer to. And start with the intro, because I feel that people are a little bit like more awkward in the beginning. So I'd rather just go right into the questioning. You know, you can do your hellos, whatever, and have your small talk in the beginning, but then just go right into it. And then you can do your intro at the end. After you ask this one question, then you want to pay attention for the emotion words. For instance, I was asking you about creating content, and you said that when you first started creating, it was really challenging and you weren't consistent. I'm going to identify the emotion words in that response, which was challenging. So I'm going to go there first. I'm going to say, okay, great. Like, I know that you tell me what exactly made it so challenging for you. And then they'll say, well, I was so focused on it being perfect, every piece of content being perfect, that it took me too much time and therefore I wasn't consistent. So they were focused on perfectionism, deeper into that. So tell me, like, what did you learn through that, and what about, being so perfect, overcome that, and what do you do differently now? And then they're probably going to be like, well, now focus on consistency by removing perfectionism, showing up daily. And I actually found my audience prefers me when I'm imperfect and I'm just me and I'm the real authentic me. So you're finding these words and you're just unraveling. And you can do this entire time. This will flow. They will even say something that will trigger you to provide some insight that you have. Oh, I had a similar experience like XYZ. Then bring it to them. Because yes, you're the host and you're interviewing them, but you can find moments where you can insert your take. So that way it's narrative. It's not just your only questions and you're not giving any input, because your audience does still want to hear from you, but you want to do this tactfully, and where appropriate, you certainly don't want to take over conversation to make this all about you, but where it makes sense. And then film your intro at the end. The reason at the end is, number one, people are more comfortable by the end, and so it just feels less awkward. And number two, you can kind of do a recap of what you discussed in the episode. So as you've gone through and asked the questions based on the responses and all of this, you really now have a very clear understanding of what you discussed in depth. So you can kind of do a quick recap of, hey, we're going to talk about how to overcome perfectionism, how to show up consistently and create content that really connects, or whatever, something like this based on whatever your conversation was. And it just makes for a smoother transition. So intro at the end. And to recap, to be a successful, engaging podcast host is don't overthink it too much. You want to focus on connection and going deep instead of having a bunch of questions. Yes, do you want to be strategic? And yes, do you want to talk about what it is that your niche is and what your audience is interested in? So keep it appropriate and in line with that. You want to dig deep and not make everything surface level. If they want surface level information, they can get that anywhere. They're coming here to learn more about this guest and you and see the dynamic between you two and an interesting, engaging conversation where to learn something and then be able to apply that to their life. So these are my top tips for being the most engaging podcast host that you can be. If you want more content like this, then subscribe and like this so that we can put out more content just like this for you. You want to learn more about how to podcast now because it's so efficient and it's easy to get started. You don't have to spend a ton of money. You can be incredibly strategic with the guests that you have on your podcast. I have a free masterclass. So go ahead and watch those if you're interested in getting started with your virtual podcast. And I have a community where we talk about all things content creation and podcasting in person and virtual. Also find me on Instagram at Kate Sells Creator. Please do not be afraid to come say hi, send me a DM, and let's get connected and create amazing content together.